The morning sun reflected off the massive windows of the Galactic Coalition Military Academy as walked through the corridors carrying a worn leather case. Her boots clicked against the metal floor with each step, and she could feel the weight of curious stares from passing cadets. The case was old, from decades of use, and it looked completely out of place in the sleek, modern facility that orbited high above a neutral moon. Today was Weapons Qualification Day, and had been dreading it for weeks. The Academy hosted 300 cadets from 73 different species across known space. Humans were a minority here, only 5 of them in the entire class. Had learned quickly that being different meant attracting attention, and attention was something she preferred to avoid. She was compact and quiet, with steady hands and a calm demeanor that most aliens found difficult to read. Her family came from Sol District back on Earth, and she carried their traditions with her even here, thousands of light years from home. The firing range occupied an entire section of the Academy. It was enormous, with multiple environments designed to test every kind of weapon system imaginable. There were zero-gravity chambers where cadets could practice shooting in space conditions, atmospheric simulation zones that replicated different planetary environments, virtual combat arenas that created holographic enemies. The technology was incredible, light years beyond anything Earth had possessed just a century ago. Entered the main preparation area and immediately spotted her bunkmate Park, was another human, taller than, with quick eyes that seemed to notice everything. She waved over to a corner bench, away from the growing crowd of alien cadets. "Are you really going through with this?" whispered, glancing at the leather case. "You know what they're going to say." Nodded slowly. She knew exactly what was coming. Around them, cadets were unpacking their weapons. The variety was staggering. A reptilian cadet named Vex carried a sleek plasma lance that hummed with contained energy, and named assembled a graviton disruptor, its crystalline components catching the light. Others had molecular, phase-shift carbines and pulse rifles that looked like they belonged in a science fiction story. Every weapon represented the pinnacle of their species' military technology. Bright colors, clean lines, and the soft glow of power cells. Placed her case on the bench and opened it. Inside, nestled in foam padding, was her great-grandfather's hunting rifle. The reaction was immediate. "What is that?" buzzed, his compound eyes focusing on the weapon. Several other cadets turned to look. Carefully lifted the rifle from its case. It was a modified Earth .338 Magnum, over 800 years old by galactic standards. The metal was dark and weathered. The wooden stock showed signs of countless repairs and careful maintenance. There were no glowing power cells, no sleek energy conduits, no holographic targeting displays. Just metal, wood, and mechanical precision. "It's a rifle," said simply. Vex slithered closer, his scales rippling with what had learned was amusement. "A rifle? That's a primitive slug thrower. Does it actually fire physical projectiles?" "Yes." The word seemed to hang in the air. Several cadets stopped their own preparations to stare. In an age where every military in the galaxy used energy-based weapons, the idea of firing actual physical bullets was absurd. It was like bringing a stone axe to a laser fight. Made a clicking sound that the universal translator rendered as laughter. "You're going to qualify with that. A chemical propulsion antique." More cadets gathered around now, drawn by the spectacle. Felt her cheeks warm but kept her expression neutral. This was exactly what she had expected, exactly what had warned her about. "Why would you bring that here?" Vex asked, genuinely curious now. "Surely Earth has modern weapons." "We do," replied, beginning to check the rifle's mechanisms with practiced efficiency. "But this one belonged to my great-grandfather. My family has used it for generations." "Sentiment over function," another alien cadet commented. "How very human." The mockery was spreading now. Cadets were pointing, their translators converting various forms of amusement and derision into words could understand. Antique, primitive, chemical propulsion. The phrases mixed together into a chorus of dismissal. Even some of the instructors seemed bemused. Noticed an avian instructor named watching from across the room, his crest feathers rising with what might have been interest. But most of the teaching staff simply exchanged glances that said they expected to fail spectacularly. Wu, another human cadet, pushed through the crowd. He was young and earnest, always ready to defend his fellow humans even when he didn't fully understand the situation. "There's nothing wrong with kinetic weapons," he said loudly. "Earth used them for thousands of years." "Exactly," Vex replied smoothly. "Thousands of years ago, we've evolved beyond such crude technology." "It's not crude," Wu insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. He didn't really understand why had brought the rifle either. None of the humans did except herself. The other human cadets, Li and Song, stood at a distance, could see the discomfort in their postures. They were embarrassed to be associated with this display. In a place where humans were already considered newcomers and outsiders, this antique rifle was drawing exactly the kind of attention they all tried to avoid. Touched arm gently. "You don't have to do this. You could use a standard-issue pulse rifle like the rest of us." Shook her head. "I'm using this." "But why?" Didn't answer. How could she explain it in a way that would make sense? The rifle wasn't just a weapon. It was a connection to her family, to Earth's history, to a tradition of precision and skill that went back centuries. Her great-grandfather had hunted with it in the Korean mountains. Her grandfather had carried it during Earth's unification conflicts. Her mother had won competitions with it. The weapon carried the accumulated knowledge of generations, and wasn't about to abandon that just because aliens thought it was funny. Instructor's voice cut through the noise. "All cadets to your assigned stations. Qualification begins in 10 minutes. The crowd dispersed, cadets moving to their positions on the firing line. The range stretched out before them, targets visible at various distances. The standard qualification course required hits at 100, 300, and 500 meters under different environmental conditions. Most cadets would use their weapons' auto-targeting systems. The energy weapons had almost no recoil, traveled at the speed of light, and required minimal skill to operate effectively. Carried her rifle to her station. Around her, weapons hummed and glowed with ready power. Her rifle was silent, cold metal and wood. Vex took the station next to hers. He powered up his plasma lance, the weapon creating a bright blue glow. Then he turned to with what might have been a smile on his reptilian face. "Tell you what, human, after I complete my qualification, I'll give you a demonstration of what a real weapon can do. Then you can try to match it with your antique." Several nearby cadets heard this and made sounds of approval. It was a challenge, and everyone knew it. Met Vex's eyes calmly. "All right." She began assembling her rifle properly, attaching the scope, checking the bolt action, loading the magazine with careful precision. Each movement was deliberate, practiced, almost meditative. She blocked out the jeers, the whispers, the mocking comments that continued around her. Instructor moved closer, his sharp avian eyes studying her weapon with unexpected intensity. He watched how she handled it, how she checked each component, how her fingers moved with the confidence of long familiarity. The mockery reached its peak when Vex stepped up to the firing line for his demonstration. His plasma lance could fire dozens of shots per minute. The energy bolts traveled instantly to their targets, leaving bright streaks in the air. He hit every target at every distance with casual ease, the weapon doing most of the work for him. When he finished, his score flashed on the display, 92% accuracy. The alien cadets made sounds of approval. It was an excellent score. Vex turned to with exaggerated courtesy. "Your turn, human. Let's see what 800 years of primitive technology can accomplish." Stepped to the firing line. She shouldered her rifle, feeling its familiar weight. Then she looked at Instructor and spoke clearly. "Permission to attempt the extended range course, sir." The preparation area went silent. The extended range course was rarely used. It was considered nearly impossible. Targets at 1,000, 2,000, and 3,500 meters. Instructor's crest feathers rose higher. Permission granted, cadet. Nodded once and took her position, the ancient rifle steady in her hands. The extended range course activated with a deep hum. The firing range's walls slid back, revealing the full depth of the facility. Target posts rose from the ground at extreme distances, so far away they looked like tiny dots even with optical enhancement. The atmospheric simulation kicked in, creating wind currents and temperature variations that mimicked real planetary conditions. Could hear murmurs behind her. Most cadets had never even seen anyone attempt this course. It required precision that energy weapons, despite all their advantages, struggled to achieve at such distances. Plasma bolts and energy beams dissipated in atmosphere beyond 8,000 meters, but more importantly, the targets were so far away that even seeing them clearly was difficult without technological assistance. Instructor moved to the observation station, his taloned fingers activating the monitoring systems. Other instructors were gathering now, drawn by news that someone was attempting the extended range qualification. Among them was Instructor Thane, a grizzled mammalian veteran with scars across his gray fur. He had fought in the Rim Wars and seen more combat than most of the teaching staff combined. "A human is trying extended range?" Thane asked, his voice a low rumble. "With a kinetic weapon," replied, never taking his eyes off. Thane's ears perked forward with interest. He joined at the observation station, knelt at the firing line and opened a small case beside her. Inside were bullets, each one precisely measured and carefully maintained. These weren't standard ammunition. Her mother had taught her how to hand-load each round, adjusting the powder charge and bullet weight for maximum accuracy. Each cartridge represented hours of careful work. She loaded 5 rounds into the rifle's internal magazine, then closed the bolt with a smooth, practiced motion. The sound was purely mechanical, a satisfying click that seemed loud in the sudden quiet. Around her, energy weapons hummed with contained power, but her rifle was silent until the moment of firing. The first target stood at 1,000 meters. Settled into position, her body forming the stable shooting platform her grandfather had taught her decades ago. Left elbow planted firmly on her knee, right hand gripping the stock, cheek pressed against the wood, eye aligned perfectly with the scope. She controlled her breathing, making it slow and regular. Through the scope, the 1,000-meter target swam into view, a human-sized silhouette, dark against the light background. The wind was blowing from her left at approximately 15 kilometers per hour. She could feel it against her face, smell the recycled air of the facility's atmospheric system. She began calculating. Wind drift at this distance with her specific bullet weight and velocity would be approximately 30 centimeters. The bullet would drop roughly 7 meters from the line of sight, which the scope's elevation adjustment would compensate for. But she also needed to account for the effect, the slight drift caused by the rotation of the moon beneath them. At 1,000 meters, it was minimal but measurable. Her fingers adjusted the scope's windage knob, 4 clicks to the left. Behind her, Vex whispered too, "What is she doing? Why doesn't she just use a targeting computer?" "She doesn't have one," buzzed back. "I don't think that weapon even has electronics." "Tune them out." She found her natural respiratory pause, the moment between breaths where her body was most still. Her finger touched the trigger, feeling its precise weight, 2 kilograms of pressure, smooth and consistent. She fired. The rifle cracked sharply, a sound completely different from the hum and sizzle of energy weapons. The recoil pushed back against her shoulder, solid and real. Smoke drifted from the muzzle. The brass cartridge ejected, tumbling through the air to land with a tiny clink on the floor. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the 1,000-meter target flashed, indicating a hit. The range computer's voice announced dispassionately, "Center mass, 1,000 meters, organic calculation." Several cadets made sounds of surprise. A hit at that distance was impressive, even with technological assistance. Without it, it was remarkable. But was already working the bolt action, chambering the second round. She had 4 more shots to make, and each one would be harder than the last. The 2,000-meter target was barely visible through the scope even at maximum magnification. At this distance, the bullet would be in flight for nearly 5 seconds. 5 seconds during which wind, gravity, and the rotation of the moon would all affect its path. The calculations became exponentially more complex. Closed her eyes for a moment, running through the mathematics in her head. Wind speed times flight time equals drift. Bullet drop follows a parabolic curve. Drift increases with distance and flight time. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, patient and clear, explaining each variable, each factor that could turn a perfect shot into a miss. She adjusted the scope's elevation, more adjustments to windage. Then she settled back into position. The facility had gone completely silent now. Even the cadets who had been mocking her were watching with full attention. There was something mesmerizing about watching a human perform complex mathematics without any assistance, seeing her make mechanical adjustments with fingers instead of computer commands. Instructor leaned slightly toward Instructor Thane. His voice was quiet, but several alien cadets' universal translators picked it up anyway. "That weapon," said softly, "in the right hands kills from continents away." Vex's head snapped around. "What? That's impossible. Energy weapons dissipate at 8,000 meters maximum. How could a primitive chemical projectile?" But wasn't paying attention to Vex anymore. His eyes were locked on. She fired. The crack of the rifle echoed through the range. The bullet left the muzzle at over 900 meters per second, spinning from the rifling grooves that gave the weapon its name. It climbed into the simulated atmosphere, began to arc downward under gravity's pull, drifted slightly in the wind. 5 seconds passed. The 2,000-meter target exploded in a puff of debris. "Center mass," the range computer announced. 2,000 meters, organic calculation." Wu, standing with the other human cadets, let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "She's doing it," he whispered too. "She's actually doing it." Nodded, her eyes bright with something that might have been pride. "My grandmother told me stories about human snipers. I thought they were exaggerated." "They're not," said quietly. He had been embarrassed by his rifle earlier, but now he was watching her with new respect. Loaded her third round. The 3,500-meter target was so distant that even through the scope it was barely more than a speck. At this range, the bullet would drop over 15 meters. The flight time would be nearly 7 seconds. The slightest error in calculation, the smallest mistake in reading the wind, and the shot would miss by meters. She took her time. There was no rush, no time limit on the qualification. She felt the wind on her face, watched the mirage shimmering above the range floor, noted the slight tremor in her hands from the adrenaline she was carefully controlling. More instructors had gathered at the observation station. Word was spreading through the academy. A human cadet was attempting the extended range course with a pre-contact kinetic weapon and hitting targets that most species couldn't manage with full technological assistance. Made her final calculations. Her fingers moved over the scope adjustments with absolute precision. Each click of the adjustment knobs was deliberate, confident. She took 3 deep breaths, then let the third one out halfway. Her heart rate slowed. Her body became perfectly still. The rifle was an extension of her arms, the scope an extension of her eye. For a moment she was connected to a tradition that stretched back through her mother, her grandfather, her great-grandfather, all the way to the earliest human hunters who learned to throw stones with precision. She pressed the trigger. The rifle fired. The recoil was familiar, comfortable. The bullet flew. 7 seconds felt like an eternity. Everyone in the facility was watching the distant target now. Even the cadets who had been mocking her earlier were silent, waiting. The target exploded. Center mass, the range computer announced. 3,500 meters, organic calculation, no technological assistance. The observation area erupted in shocked murmurs. Instructor Thane's ears were fully erect now, his eyes wide with surprise. Several alien cadets made sounds of disbelief in their native languages, momentarily overwhelming their translators. Lowered her rifle and engaged the safety. She stood up slowly, her legs slightly stiff from kneeling. The mockery had died completely. In its place was stunned silence, broken only by whispers of confusion and amazement. Vex stared at her, his reptilian eyes unblinking. "How?" he finally asked. "How is that possible without a targeting computer?" Met his gaze calmly. "Practice," she said simply, "and knowledge passed down through generations." Instructor approached the firing line. His crest feathers were fully raised now, a sign of intense interest in his species. "Cadet," he said formally, "you have scored 100% on the extended range course. This is only the third time in Academy history that anyone has achieved this score, and the first time it has been done without technological assistance." He paused, looking at the ancient rifle in her hands. "I think," he continued, "that we all need to learn more about human kinetic weapons." The barracks were quiet that evening. Sat on her bunk, carefully cleaning her rifle with an old cloth that smelled of gun, oil, and memories. The weapon lay disassembled on a mat before her, each component being meticulously wiped down and inspected. This ritual was as important as the shooting itself. Her grandfather had taught her that a weapon was only as reliable as the care you gave it. Wu appeared in the doorway, hesitating before entering. "Can I ask you something?" Nodded, not looking up from her work. "How did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked, sitting down across from her. "I've used rifles before back on Earth, but nothing like what you did today. That was incredible." "Family tradition," replied, running the cloth along the rifle's barrel. "My great-grandfather was a hunter in the Korean mountains. He taught my grandfather taught my mother taught me." "But it's more than just teaching, isn't it?" Wu pressed. "Those calculations you were doing in your head, the way you read the wind, adjusted for distance, that's not something you learn from a book." Smiled slightly. "No, it's something you learn from thousands of hours of practice, from shooting in rain, wind, heat, cold, from missing shots and understanding why, from succeeding and understanding that too." Before Wu could respond, an announcement came through the barrack speakers. All cadets were to report to the main lecture hall in 20 minutes. Mandatory tactical seminar. Subject not. Poked her head into the room. "Did you hear that? I wonder what this is about." They would find out soon enough. The lecture hall was massive, designed to accommodate all 300 cadets at once. The seats filled quickly, the usual mixture of species creating a rainbow of colors and body types. The human cadets clustered together near the middle, a small island in a sea of aliens. Instructor took the podium. Behind him, a massive holographic display activated, showing the title of the seminar, Pre-Contact Human Warfare, a Historical Analysis. Interested murmurs spread through the hall. Many cadets glanced at the human section, clearly connecting the topic to his performance earlier that day. "Today," began, his translator rendering his avian speech into clear galactic standard, "we witnessed something remarkable. A cadet achieved perfect scores on our most difficult marksmanship test using a weapon that many of you considered primitive and outdated. This presents us with an important question. How could pre-contact technology compete with modern systems?" The display changed, showing images of Earth from different historical periods. Ancient human hunters with spears, medieval archers with longbows, modern soldiers with rifles. "Humans," continued, refined kinetic weapons over thousands of years. While most species abandoned such technology shortly after discovering energy-based systems, humans continued to develop and perfect ballistic weapons for centuries after they had access to laser and plasma technology. Vex raised his hand. But why? Surely they understood that energy weapons were superior. Crest feathers rippled. That's what we assumed, but today's demonstration suggests we may have been wrong. Let's examine the facts. The display showed a data chart. The longest confirmed military kill in human history before they achieved was 3,540 meters. A human sniper, armed with a rifle not substantially different from the one cadet used today, eliminated a target at that range. Shocked whispers filled the hall. That was exactly the distance had shot. But there are unconfirmed reports, added, of successful engagements beyond 4,000 meters, and that's just with infantry weapons. The display changed again, this time showing something that made several cadets gasp. A missile, massive and sleek, labeled as an Earth intercontinental ballistic missile. Before humans achieved fusion power, explained, they developed kinetic weapons that could strike targets 15,000 kilometers away with pinpoint accuracy. These weapons used chemical propulsion and could deliver warheads across continents. Instructor Thane stood up from where he had been sitting at the side of the hall. I think it's important to add some context here, he rumbled. Most of you are wondering why this matters. After all, we have energy weapons now. They're faster, easier to use, and carry unlimited ammunition as long as you have a power source. He walked to the podium and the display changed to show a star chart. During the Rim Wars, my unit was caught in an ion storm on the fourth planet of the system. Our energy weapons stopped functioning. Every single one. The electromagnetic interference was too strong. His face was grim. We would have been overrun if it weren't for a human auxiliary unit. They were equipped with kinetic rifles, chemical propulsion, mechanical sights. The ion storm didn't affect them at all. Those primitive weapons saved 300 coalition soldiers that day. The hall was completely silent now. Even Vex had stopped making skeptical sounds. Leaned over to and whispered, "Is that why you brought your rifle? Because it's more reliable?" Shook her head slightly. "I brought it because it's mine, because it connects me to my family. But yes, there are practical reasons too." Sitting on the other side, spoke up. "I'm starting to understand. We humans don't see technology as a straight line from worse to better. We see it as a collection of tools, each useful in different situations." Instructor's hearing was sharp. "Exactly right, Cadet Lee. Humans developed what they call a toolbox philosophy. They kept old technologies alongside new ones because they understood that circumstances change. What works in one situation might fail in another." The display showed various weapons side by side, a plasma rifle and a kinetic rifle. Energy weapons have clear advantages: no recoil, instant impact, no ammunition weight, but they also have significant weaknesses. They dissipate in atmosphere beyond 8,000 meters. They create massive energy signatures that any sensor can detect. They fail in electromagnetic interference. They require advanced manufacturing to repair. He gestured to the kinetic rifle on the display. Meanwhile, this technology is reliable in almost any condition. It works in ion storms, in extreme heat or cold, in electromagnetic interference. It can be repaired with basic tools. It creates minimal sensor signature, and in the hands of a trained user, it can achieve precision that rivals or exceeds energy weapons at certain ranges. The fourth human cadet raised her hand. "But Instructor, if this is so valuable, why isn't it taught more widely in the coalition military?" Instructor's crest feathers drooped slightly. "Because most species see technology as linear progression. Newer must be better, older must be obsolete. Humans are unusual in maintaining their old skills and technologies even after adopting new ones." The display changed again, showing footage from qualification earlier that day. The cadets watched in silence as she calculated, adjusted, and fired with mechanical precision. Seeing it again, removed from the moment, made it even more impressive. The mathematics she was doing in her head, the environmental factors she was accounting for, the physical discipline required to remain perfectly still. It was a demonstration of human capability that went far beyond simply pulling a trigger. When the footage ended, Instructor Thane spoke again. "I've fought alongside dozens of species. Each one has strengths. They are excellent in zero-gravity combat. They have superior reaction times. They are masters of defensive positions. And humans," he paused, looking directly at the human cadets, "humans remember things. They maintain skills that others consider obsolete. They practice disciplines that seem outdated. And when circumstances change, when the modern technology fails, they're ready with solutions that everyone else forgot." Vex stood up slowly. "Instructor, I think I owe Cadet an apology. I called her weapon primitive. I see now that I was confusing old with ineffective." Nodded approvingly. "That's a valuable lesson, Cadet Vex. Age is not the same as obsolescence." After the seminar ended, cadets filed out of the hall in small groups, talking excitedly. The conversation had shifted dramatically from the morning's mockery. Now there was curiosity, respect, and genuine interest. Vex approached in the corridor outside. "Cadet," he said formally, "I spoke poorly this morning. I judged your weapon without understanding it. That was foolish of me." Considered him for a moment, then nodded. "Accepted. Would you like to understand it better?" "Yes," Vex replied immediately, "if you're willing to teach." "The rifle is a family weapon," said carefully, "but I can teach you the principles. The mathematics, the physics, the discipline, those aren't secret." As they walked back toward the barracks, Wu caught up with them. "That was amazing. I had no idea our traditions were so valuable." "Every tradition is valuable to someone," replied. "The key is knowing when to use it and when to adapt." Appeared with news that made everyone stop walking. "The Academy's Combat Doctrine Committee wants a demonstration for visiting coalition military officials. They want to see what human marksmanship really means." Felt a weight settle in her stomach. "When?" 3 days from now. High-ranking officers from across the galaxy will be there." The small group of humans exchanged glances. What had started as a personal qualification test was becoming something much larger, something political. "No pressure," said with a weak smile. But they all knew the truth. There was enormous pressure. Earth was still a newcomer to the coalition. Humans were still proving themselves worthy of respect and responsibility. This demonstration wouldn't just be about marksmanship anymore. It would be about proving that humanity deserved a place at the table. That night sat alone in the observation room looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, the planet where generations of her family had lived and died. They had passed down their knowledge, their skills, their traditions, never knowing that one day those old ways would matter on a galactic stage. She thought about her great-grandfather, hunting in mountains he would never leave. Her grandfather, fighting in conflicts he barely survived. Her mother, perfecting her precision on peaceful ranges. None of them had imagined this moment. But all of them had prepared her for it. 2 days before the demonstration, found herself staring at an empty armory case. The space where her rifle should have been was conspicuously vacant, the foam padding undisturbed except for the rifle-shaped impression. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked the case again, hoping she had simply missed it somehow. But the rifle was gone. "Instructor," she called out, her voice more steady than she felt, "my weapon is missing." The avian instructor's crest feathers shot up immediately. Within minutes, the armory was sealed and Academy security was reviewing footage. Stood to the side with Wu, and all of them wearing expressions of concern. "Who would steal it?" Wu asked quietly. Everyone knows how important this demonstration is. That's exactly why someone would steal it, replied grimly. Not everyone wants it to succeed. The security footage showed a figure entering the armory at 200 hours, wearing a hooded maintenance uniform that obscured their species. They moved directly to his locker, removed the rifle case, and left. The entire operation took less than 3 minutes, suggesting they knew exactly what they were looking for and where to find it. Can't identify the species from body shape, the security officer reported. The uniform is standard issue. No biological markers detected. Instructor's feathers ruffled with anger. This is sabotage. The demonstration has political implications. Earth is lobbying for expanded representation in coalition military command. Some factions would prefer that humans remain in minor roles. Felt the weight of that statement. This wasn't just about her anymore. It had never been just about her. The rifle represented something larger, humanity's claim to expertise, to tactical value, to deserving a voice in galactic military decisions. Admiral, an aquatic species who had arrived early for the demonstration, made his position clear during a briefing that afternoon. If Earth cannot even protect their equipment from theft, perhaps they are not ready for expanded command positions. His translator rendered his bubbling speech with cold precision. The words stung because they were deliberately designed to sting. Sat through the briefing in silence, feeling the eyes of dozens of officials on her. That evening, as she tried to sleep, the pressure became almost physical. Her mind ran through scenarios. The rifle destroyed, the demonstration canceled, Earth's petition, her family's legacy ended. She found herself in the firing range at 300 hours, unable to rest, packing the empty lanes. Found her there, you need to sleep. I can't, admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see myself failing. I see Earth being dismissed because I couldn't even keep my weapon safe. That's not your fault. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. The result is the same. They sat together in silence for a while, the vast firing range empty and dark around them. Finally, spoke again. When I was young, my grandmother told me about the Soul Defense. Did you ever hear that story? Shook her head. During the unification conflict, Seoul was surrounded. Everyone expected it to fall, but the defenders held for 3 months against impossible odds. You know how they did it? Didn't wait for an answer. They used every tool they had. Modern plasma weapons when those worked. Old kinetic rifles when the power failed. Knives when ammunition ran out. They didn't win because they had the best technology. They won because they refused to give up. The story helped a little, but still couldn't sleep. Dawn came with unexpected news, burst into the barracks breathless. We found it, the rifle. The weapon had been hidden in a maintenance shaft 3 levels below the armory. Had suggested searching the less traveled areas of the academy, and security teams had finally located it. But when examined the rifle, her heart sank. The scope had been deliberately misaligned. Someone had struck it hard enough to knock the internal mechanisms out of zero. All her careful adjustments, all the precise calibration that allowed her to hit targets at extreme range, gone. Can you fix it? Instructor Thane asked. Yes, replied, but I need to re-zero it. I need a range, distance markers, time to make adjustments and confirm them. The main range is being prepared for the demonstration tomorrow, said. It's off limits. Felt despair creeping in. Without a properly zeroed scope, she couldn't make the shots. The demonstration would fail. Everything would fall apart. Instructor Thane's ears swiveled forward thoughtfully. The academy has a wilderness survival zone. Real environment, real terrain, variable conditions. It's not ideal, but it might work. I'll go with her, volunteered immediately. I can spot for her. They departed within the hour, taking a transport to the far edge of the academy's territory, where the wilderness zone sprawled across several square kilometers of the moon's surface under a protective atmospheric dome. The environment was harsh wind, simulated rain, rocky terrain with natural elevation changes. Carried range-finding equipment while carried her rifle case and a box of ammunition. The weather simulation was running at high intensity, creating conditions that would have been uncomfortable even in protective gear. "This is actually better," said as they hiked to an elevated position. "The demonstration will probably have variable conditions too. If I can zero the scope here, I'll be ready for anything." They worked through the afternoon and into the evening, fired groups of shots at various distances, using natural landmarks as reference points. After each group, she made tiny adjustments to the scope, compensating for the damage. Called out impacts through his spotting scope, helping her understand where the bullets were going. 2 centimeters high, 1 centimeter right at 500 meters, he called out. Made the adjustment and fired again. The work was meticulous, demanding, and frustrating. Every time she thought she had it perfect, the next test at a different range would reveal another inconsistency. Rain began falling as darkness approached. Real rain, part of the wilderness zone's environmental simulation. It soaked through their uniforms, made the ground slippery, and turned the scope's lenses into blurry circles of moisture. "We should stop," suggested. "Come back tomorrow morning." "No," replied. "Tomorrow I need to be resting, preparing mentally. This has to be finished tonight." They continued working through the darkness, using portable lights to illuminate distant targets. Fingers were numb from the cold, her body exhausted from hiking and shooting. But slowly, methodically, the scope began to return to zero. At 400 hours, 20 hours before the demonstration, fired her final confirmation group. 3 shots at 1,000 meters, the farthest reliable distance in the wilderness zone. Checked through the spotting scope, then looked up with a tired smile. All 3 shots within 5 centimeters of each other, dead center of the target. The rifle was ready. They hiked back to the transport in the pre-dawn darkness, carried the rifle carefully, almost reverently. It had been damaged but not destroyed, sabotaged but not defeated, just like her resolve. When they returned to the academy, they found the other human cadets waiting for them. Wu had been researching historical Earth military demonstrations, finding stories of humans who succeeded under pressure, had compiled tactical data about the demonstration range. Even, who normally maintained careful emotional distance, embraced in the corridor. "We've got your back," she said simply. That evening, the night before the demonstration, finally slept. She dreamed of her great-grandfather in the Korean mountains, tracking deer through morning mist. She dreamed of her grandfather on a battlefield, calm despite chaos. She dreamed of her mother on a competition range, breathing steadily, finding perfect stillness. When she woke, the weight of pressure had transformed into something else: purpose. The demonstration would be difficult. The range would be configured for maximum challenge. The officials would be skeptical, maybe even hostile. Admiral would be watching, hopping to see her fail. But none of that mattered as much as what Instructor Thane had told her the night before, standing in the rain-soaked wilderness zone. "Your great-grandfather never thought about impressing admirals when he hunted," Thane had said. "He thought about feeding his family. Your grandfather didn't fight for political points. He fought for survival. Your mother didn't compete for galactic recognition. She competed for personal excellence." He had looked at her with his wise eyes. "So don't shoot for Earth tomorrow. Don't shoot for the coalition. Shoot for them, for your family, for the tradition they gave you. Everything else is just noise." Cleaned her rifle one final time, checked every component, loaded her carefully prepared ammunition. The case closed with a soft click. Tomorrow she would show them what human marksmanship meant. Not because she had to prove anything to the galaxy, but because her family had taught her how to shoot, and she would honor that teaching with every breath, every calculation, every carefully placed bullet. The rifle was ready, She was ready. Let them watch. The observation deck was packed with military officials from across the galaxy. Admiral occupied the central position, his aquatic tank providing a clear view of the firing range below. Around him sat generals, tactical advisors, and Coalition Council representatives, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Media drones hovered at designated positions, recording everything for broadcast across Coalition space. Stood at the preparation area, checking her rifle one final time. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. She had slept well, eaten properly, and spent the morning in quiet meditation. The pressure was still there, but it no longer felt crushing. It felt almost natural, like the weight of the rifle in her hands. Approached, wearing her cadet dress uniform. The human delegation just arrived from Earth, there in the diplomatic section. Nodded but didn't look up. She didn't need to see the Earth representatives to know what they expected. The weight of their hopes was already part of the burden she carried. Instructor took the podium in the observation deck, his voice amplified throughout the facility. Distinguished guests, today's demonstration will showcase human marksmanship capabilities using kinetic weapon systems. Cadet will engage targets at progressively extreme ranges using only organic calculation and mechanical adjustments. Admiral's translator bubbled to life. I propose we make this demonstration more realistic. Add combat stress factors. Instructor's crest feathers rippled with surprise. Admiral, that wasn't part of the planned demonstration. If we're evaluating human tactical capabilities, replied, we should see them under realistic conditions. Combat is never ideal. Add environmental interference, flash effects, variable wind patterns. Let's see if these claimed skills hold up under pressure. There was a moment of tense silence. Heard the exchange through the range's speaker system. Was trying to make her fail, trying to create conditions so difficult that success would be impossible. It was a political move, an attempt to undermine Earth's petition before it could gain momentum. Instructor looked down from the observation deck. Their eyes met across the distance. He was giving her the choice, accept the harder conditions or refuse and look weak. Spoke clearly into her communication device. I accept the modified conditions. A ripple of surprise ran through the observation deck. Several officials made sounds of approval, even seemed momentarily taken aback. The range simulation activated with new parameters. Wind patterns became chaotic, gusting and shifting. Simulated artillery created loud explosions and flash effects at irregular intervals. Temperature gradients appeared, creating mirage effects that would distort targeting at long range. It was designed to be overwhelming, to break concentration, to make precision shooting nearly impossible. Took her position on the firing line. The first target appeared at 1,500 meters, a distance well within her capabilities under normal conditions. But the wind was gusting between 20 and 50 kilometers per hour, changing direction every few seconds. Flash grenades were detonating in her peripheral vision. The air shimmered with heat distortion. She closed her eyes for a moment, shutting out the chaos. Her mother's voice came back to her, calm and patient. The wind will always change. The conditions will always be difficult, but the principles remain the same. Physics doesn't care about your stress. The bullet will do what physics demands. Your job is to understand what physics demands. Opened her eyes and began her calculations. The wind was variable, but it had a pattern. She watched dust particles in the air, felt the pressure against her face, noted how the mirage shimmered. 15 seconds of observation gave her enough data. The average wind was 30 kilometers per hour from her left, with gusts to 45. She adjusted for average conditions, knowing the shot might be slightly affected by a gust. Then she settled into her shooting position and waited for the right moment. The flash grenades had a pattern too. They detonated every 8 to 12 seconds. She counted, found the rhythm, and chose her moment. The rifle cracked. The bullet flew true despite a sudden gust. The target flashed a hit indicator. 1,500 meters, the range computer announced. Hit. Organic calculation under combat stress conditions. The second target appeared at 2,500 meters. Now the environmental factors became critical. At this distance, the bullet would be in flight for over 5 seconds, time for the wind to push it significantly off course. The temperature gradients created mirage so severe that the target seemed to dance and shimmer through her scope. Didn't rush. She observed, calculated, adjusted. The flash grenades continued detonating, but she had learned to ignore them. The explosions were just noise, no different from thunder or breaking waves. Her focus narrowed to the scope, the target, the wind. She fired. 5 seconds of flight time. The bullet traced its invisible arc through chaotic air currents. Hit. 2,500 meters. Hit. Admiral leaned forward in his tank, his translator conveying surprise. Increase the difficulty, he ordered. Maximum environmental interference. The simulation responded immediately. The wind became violent, gusting to 70 kilometers per hour. The flash effects intensified, creating blinding bursts of light. Simulated rain began falling, making visibility even worse. The conditions were beyond realistic now. They represented the worst possible combat environment. The third target appeared at 3,800 meters. In the observation deck, Instructor Thane spoke quietly to the officials around him. At this distance, under these conditions, even our most advanced targeting computers struggle to achieve hits. She's attempting this with manual calculation. Impossible, someone muttered. Perhaps, Thane replied, but humans seem to specialize in the impossible. Stood at the firing line, rain soaking her uniform, wind pushing against her body. Through the scope, the distant target was barely visible, obscured by rain and mirage. She spent 3 full minutes observing, calculating, accounting for variables that most species would need computer assistance to even identify. The bullet would drop over 15 meters. The wind would push it several meters to the side, but which direction depended on gusts that changed every few seconds. The rain would affect the bullet's ballistic coefficient, slowing it fractionally. The temperature difference between her position and the target area created density variations in the air. It was, by any reasonable standard, an impossible shot. Made her final adjustments and fired. 7 seconds of flight time through chaos. The target flashed. Hit. The observation deck erupted in shocked murmurs. Media drones repositioned for better angles. Several officials stood up from their seats. Even appeared stunned, his translator silent for a long moment. But wasn't finished. Admiral, recovering from his surprise, made one final demand. I want to see this continental range capability that was mentioned. Place a target at maximum facility distance. Instructor objected. Admiral, that's 4,800 meters. Under current conditions, It's what I want to see, interrupted. If humans claim their kinetic weapons can engage at continental distances, let's see proof. The range computer confirmed maximum safe distance, 4,800 meters. A target rose at that extreme range, so distant it was barely a speck even with optical enhancement. Felt the weight of every eye in the facility on her. This was beyond qualification standards, beyond tactical requirements. This was trying to force a failure, to prove that human claims were exaggerated. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to show what human dedication and tradition could achieve. She requested a specific ammunition load from her prepared supplies, heavier bullets, optimized for extreme range. The change in ammunition required recalculating everything from scratch. She knelt at the firing line and began working through the mathematics. The wind was still gusting violently. The rain continued falling. Flash effects lit up the range at irregular intervals. The target was so far away that the bullet would be in flight for over 8 seconds. Every variable was to extreme levels. Wu watched from the cadet section, his hands gripped together tightly. She can't make this shot. Nobody could make this shot. She can, replied with absolute certainty. I've seen her grandfather's journals. He made shots like this during the unification conflicts. It's in her blood. 10 minutes passed while calculated. She used a small notebook to work through the most complex mathematics, double-checking every number. The observation deck grew restless, some officials questioning whether she was stalling. But those who understood marksmanship recognized what they were seeing: a human mind processing hundreds of variables, creating a ballistic solution that would challenge even advanced computers. Finally, set aside the notebook and settled into her final shooting position. She had one bullet, one chance, 8 seconds of flight time through the worst conditions the range could generate. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat became a steady rhythm. The chaos around her faded until there was nothing but the scope, the target, and the accumulated knowledge of 4 generations of her family. She fired. The rifle's crack seemed louder this time, more definitive. The bullet left the muzzle at 915 meters per second, spinning from the rifling grooves. It climbed into the rain-soaked air, began its long arc under gravity's pull, drifted in the chaotic wind, pushed through temperature gradients and density variations. 8 seconds felt like an eternity. The entire facility held its breath. The distant target exploded in a shower of debris. 4,800 meters, the range computer announced. Perfect center mass hit, 0 technological assistance, environmental conditions severe. For a moment there was complete silence. Then the observation deck erupted, not in polite applause but in genuine shock and amazement. Officials who had been skeptical were standing now, talking rapidly. Media drones swarmed closer. The Earth delegation was celebrating openly. Admiral sat in his tank, staring at the display showing the confirmed hit. Finally, his translator activated. I want to inspect that weapon personally. Unloaded the rifle, engaged the safety, and walked to the observation deck. She handed the weapon to the Admiral, who examined it with careful attention. His aquatic appendages traced the purely mechanical scope, the simple bolt action, the wooden stock worn smooth by generations of hands. Your species maintained this level of precision, said slowly, before you achieved. Yes, Admiral, replied. Human snipers made shots beyond 2,000 meters for centuries before we reached the stars. Why? Asked, genuinely confused. Why continue refining such primitive technology when you had access to energy weapons? Chose her words carefully. Because we learned that new technology doesn't erase the value of old knowledge. Energy weapons are excellent tools, but in ion storms they fail. In certain atmospheric conditions they dissipate. When power systems are damaged, they stop working. Kinetic weapons don't have those weaknesses. We kept both because we might need both. Instructor stepped forward. Admiral, cadet represents a principle that humans understand better than most species. Technology should serve tactics, not define them. The best weapon is the one that works in your current situation, whether that weapon is 800 years old or brand new. The Coalition Military Committee convened immediately for an emergency session. The discussion lasted 3 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Earth's petition for expanded tactical command positions was approved unanimously. More significantly, the committee commissioned a comprehensive study of human kinetic warfare for possible integration into coalition doctrine. Several species formally requested human marksmanship instructors for their elite units. The rifle that had been mocked just days ago became a symbol of human tactical philosophy: adaptability over ideology, knowledge over assumption, precision over power. That evening, Vex found in the armory, where she was cleaning her rifle. He stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. Cadet, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect. What you demonstrated today wasn't just skill, it was wisdom. Would you? Would you be willing to teach me, not just how to shoot, but how to think the way you think? Looked up from her work. I can teach you the principles, the mathematics, the observation, the discipline, but the connection to tradition, that's something you'll have to build for yourself. I'd like to try. Over the next weeks, word spread through the academy. This demonstration had resonated far beyond the immediate political implications. Cadets from dozens of species approached her, asking questions about human methods, human history, human ways of thinking about problems. A human marksmanship club formed with 37 members, including 15 different species, and helped design the curriculum. Wu managed the logistics, handled coordination with the Academy's tactical department. The rifle's family heirloom remained hers alone, but its lessons spread throughout the Academy and beyond. Months later, Instructor gave a final lecture to the graduating class. Sat with her fellow cadets, the rifle case at her feet as always. Today you complete your training, said. You'll go on to serve in various positions throughout the coalition military. You come from 73 different species, each bringing unique strengths. But I hope you've learned one critical lesson from your time here. He paused, his crest feathers rising. Advanced technology doesn't erase the value of fundamental skills. Innovation doesn't replace tradition. Progress doesn't mean abandoning everything that came before. Humans remembered that truth. They kept their old knowledge alive even as they reached for the stars. Perhaps we should all remember it. After the ceremony, stood in the firing range one last time before graduation. She assembled her great-grandfather's rifle with practiced efficiency, feeling the weight of history in her hands. Joined her, along with the other human cadets. They stood together in comfortable silence, 5 humans among hundreds of aliens, but no longer feeling like outsiders. They had proven their worth not by becoming like everyone else, but by showing the value of being different. What will you do after graduation? Asked. Teach, replied. The coalition is setting up a kinetic weapons school. They want instructors who understand both the old ways and the new context. And the rifle? Smiled, running her hand along the weathered wooden stock. Goes with me. Someday I'll pass it to my children and they'll pass it to theirs. The weapon itself isn't what matters. It's what the weapon represents: knowledge preserved, skills maintained, traditions honored. She thought of her great-grandfather hunting in Korean mountains, her grandfather fighting in conflicts he barely survived, her mother perfecting her precision on peaceful ranges. None of them had imagined their skills would matter on a galactic stage, but all of them had prepared her for exactly this moment. The rifle had been mocked, then feared, then respected. Now it was becoming something else, a bridge between Earth's past and humanity's future among the stars. Took one final shot, a distant target at 3,000 meters. The bullet flew true as she knew it would. The fundamentals never changed. Physics remained constant. Precision was always valuable. As she cleaned the rifle for the journey ahead, she whispered words her great-grandfather had spoken to her grandfather, words her grandfather had spoken to her mother, words her mother had spoken to her. The rifle doesn't care about politics. The bullet doesn't know who's watching. You just need to know the wind. The wind, she understood now, could be anything. Cultural barriers, political opposition, technological change, but the principle remained the same. Understand the forces acting on you, calculate their effects, make your adjustments, and when the moment is right, take your shot. Everything else was just noise.